Friends, I want to open our worship time this morning with a reading from the Gospel of Matthew. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version, and I'm reading chapter 22, verse 15 through 22. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap Jesus in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax." And brought him a denarius. And then he said to them, "Whose head is this and whose title?" And they answered, "The emperor's." And then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." And when they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. We have 16 days until the election. And I don't know about all of you, but I badly need some centering good news in my life. This passage here from the Gospel of Matthew has a message that I desperately need during these uncertain times. This is one of those situations where historical context makes a huge difference in how we understand a passage from Scripture. Biblical scholar J. Marvin McMinkle writes in the commentary on this passage in Feasting on the Word. He writes this: "Palestine was a colony of the Roman Empire, and the Jews were paying taxes that supported the army and the government that was occupying their country. As their name suggests, the Herodians were allied with Herod, who had been named King of the Jews by Rome. The Pharisees, who were committed to every detail of Jewish law, opposed paying the tax to Caesar for religious reasons." McMinkle goes on to write that both parties, both the Herodians and the Pharisees, were out to discredit Jesus and his movement. Jesus, with his movement of nonviolent resistance to the occupation and his commitment to loving neighbors and welcoming people who were shunned and hated by Palestinian society, he was generally unpopular, both among the Jewish leadership and among the leadership of the occupying Roman Empire. In this passage, they are both trying to discredit his movement, to either end in his arrest and his death, or to end in him losing popular support. And that is why they pose this trick question about paying taxes. And Jesus's answer is brilliant. Jesus said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." What belongs to the emperor and what belongs to God? This, friends, in this question, is the powerful good news that I am hungry for. See, this passage is explicitly about paying taxes, but it's also about so much more than that. And today, I don't really want to talk about paying taxes, although that is a lively conversation for us to have, especially as Quakers. Some Quakers choose not to pay all of their taxes, so that their money is not going towards funding wars. And some Quakers choose to live simply enough that they do not have to pay taxes, as a form of tax resistance. But today, I don't really want to talk about the nuances of paying taxes and tax resistance. Instead, today, I am more concerned with generally what we owe our government. I'm more concerned with nationalism, with patriotism, with support for those who are in leadership in our government. And ultimately, I am concerned about a coup in November. See, our current president is unwilling to commit to a peaceful transfer of power. And so we are left not really sure what will happen in November on Election Day, but more importantly, for the weeks after. Our country is in a place where we are racked with political division. And there has been a stark rise in poverty and deep economic distress brought on by the pandemic. We are filled with the very real fear of illness and death from COVID-19, and with restrictions on how we live our lives, socialize with one another, gather together as communities. The pandemic has worn us thin as a country. And of course, Americans, we own more guns than you could shake a stick at, right? So many guns in our country. And all of these things combined, they make things look a little dicey for November. And I'm not really an alarmist. I think we're on the brink of something. And what we're on the brink of, that's not clear. And this passage from Matthew, it comes in and it asks us, where do your loyalties lie? What do you owe the empire? And what do you owe God? And the truth is, of course, that we owe God everything. But it is also true that what that looks like is a matter of individual conscience and individual discernment. It's a question that I cannot answer for you, but you have to answer for yourselves. The truth of this passage is that our faith is always central to our lives. It informs our politics. That's perhaps particularly true for us Quakers. And it shapes how we spend our money and how we make friends, how we parent our children, how we buy groceries, and in most every other way. It is also true and important right now to remember that Jesus resisted the occupation, resisting the empire. And that truth, that matters right now for us. Theologian and biblical scholar Richard Worsley writes this in his book entitled Jesus and Empire, the Kingdom of God and the New World Disorder. He writes this on page 126 and 127. In both his actions and his teachings, Jesus opposed the Roman imperial order and its effect on its subject peoples. In prophetic proclamation and demonstrations directly against the imperial order, Jesus announced that both the Roman imperial rulers and the exploitive Herodians and high priest clients of Jerusalem stood under God's judgment. His mission in Galilee and other villages focused on healing the debilitating effects of imperial violence and on renewing the cooperative spirit in those communities that were disintegrating under the impact of that imperial order. Appealing to and adapting traditional values and principles of just and cooperative political and economic relations. Jesus called people to take control of their lives in a nonviolent social revolution. This is the context of Jesus' remarks about giving to the empire what belongs to the empire and giving to God what belongs to God. Jesus was building a cooperative, nonviolent movement that focused on healing the trauma that had been created by imperialism and occupation and systemic violence. I think a lot about Jesus's mission. I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and what it means to be a follower of Jesus and follow in his footsteps. I've been thinking a lot about how everything belongs to God and how all of my efforts should be bent towards that cooperative, nonviolent, and healing work that Jesus did. There is a call here in this passage, hidden within the diplomacy of what Jesus said in the moment. And that call is urgent and vital for us today. It is a call to move forward in doing the hard work of discerning for yourself what you will do to follow the example of Jesus. How you will do the work of healing and peace and justice. How you will give to the government what is owed to them, but give to God what is owed to God. It is a reminder that our allegiance is not to one person who is in power, but that our allegiance is to a spirit that is love and mercy in our world. This passage is a reminder that we cannot follow without question. It is a reminder that our first loyalty is to God. This passage reminds us that it is our responsibility to do the work of answering this call and that it will look different for each person. That it is our responsibility to discern for ourselves how we are led forward. What could this look like in practical terms right now in 2020? One small part of that answer is to prepare ourselves for nonviolent organizing in November. There's a group of organizers and activists, academics, trainers, concerned citizens who have begun a series of trainings and have built up resources. The trainings are being held all across the country, and they are working to prepare people for the scenario of a possible coup in 2020. The movement is called Choose Democracy. And one of the organizers of that project is Quaker activist and academic George Lakey. George Lakey is coming here to New Garden Friends meeting. He will be our adult forum speaker on the first Sunday in November, the Sunday just prior to the election. I'm happy to include the link in the comments section again at the end of worship, although I included it at the beginning of worship, if you would like to look for yourself at what these resources look like. I found the resources incredibly encouraging and helpful because it is helping me think through how I will prepare for that nonviolent work that we may be called upon to do in November. That work of insisting on a peaceful transfer of power. This work, I think, is an excellent example of giving to our government what is owed to our government. In this case, it means supporting the laws of our country and upholding our traditions of democracy. That is what we owe our government, the body that sees to our cooperative well-being in this country. It is also a great example of giving to God what is owed God. In this case, nonviolent organizing, protesting, or perhaps non-compliance, so that we can uphold the democracy that we have built together. I know this may seem like an extreme and frightening conversation, but 2020 is not a regular year. And it's important to be prepared to live into our values as Quakers, to act with the integrity that we Quakers are famous for. Now is the time, more so I think than ever before, to ask ourselves what in our lives belongs to God. Now is the time for us to be careful in how we answer that question of what belongs to Caesar and what belongs to God. Friends, I know that this is a difficult moment for all of us, but this passage in Matthew and the stories that are in the Gospels, they are filled with good news. And I want to invite you to hear again that good news. Jesus shows us a better way, a way that does require us to stretch and question and grow, but a way that is ultimately about peace and love, goodness and kindness, flourishing even in moments of occupation, violence, and despair. Hear again the good news that the Spirit is at work in our world, constantly murmuring to us stories of righteousness, mercy, and peace. Hear again the good news that we are people who belong to God, and that no empire, no government, no politician, no unrest and no upheaval, no hardship, suffering, or trial, nothing can change the truth that our God is a God of love, and our God is a God of peace, and our God is a God of justice. And that Spirit is alive, surrounding us and uplifting us. May this week be a week of discernment. May it be a week where we seek truth together. May it be a week where you discover for yourself the answer to that question. What belongs to Caesar? And what belongs to God? And friend, how are you led in this moment?